So tonight we're in for, I think what you will find is a real treat. It is three students of Theosophy will be speaking about the influence of Theosophia in the founding and shaping of the United States of America. And our first speaker, Jim Tepfer, is a longtime student of Theosophy, and he's been attending the Santa Barbara Lodge since 1967. So you can count those decades. And anybody who knows Jim knows that he is a real admirer of Thomas Paine. He radiates Thomas Paine. And he has gained so much from his participation in the Thomas Paine Friends Society in America. So if you're ready, Jim, we'll...
Good evening. It's nice to see enthusiasm. It's contagious. So it's my privilege this evening, as well as my pleasure, actually, to talk about that courageous and magnanimous servant of the Theosophical adepts, Thomas Paine. Before setting out the life and thought of Paine, let me say from the start that I am deeply indebted to Sri Raghavan Iyer, a profound theosophical teacher, Oxford Don, and political philosopher, who first introduced me to Paine many decades ago at the University of California. Paine's sparkling political insights were often cited in Sri Iyer's legendary classes on the dialectic, anarchist thought, and American radicalism. More significantly, Sri Iyer's seminal book, Parapolitics Toward the City of Man, includes a brief but telling account of Paine's prescient contributions to the emerging cosmopolis of the 21st century. I'm also indebted to that noble and exemplary agent of the Mahatmas, William Quan Judge, whose article, The Adepts in America in 1776, helped me to appreciate the wholesome and illuminating influences of the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas on the receptive mind of Paine. That's very real when you read Paine, that there was definitely a wonderful, beneficent, wholesome influence to which she was exceedingly receptive and extremely grateful, as we will see in a quote from Paine. Turning to Paine himself, we might say with great conviction that America was thrice blessed during the tumultuous revolutionary period to have in its midst a noble revolutionary or visionary who saw the America to be as a potentially embodying a new order of the ages. Beautiful phrase from Paine, a new order of the ages. As a living experiment in democratic principles, and America as being a potential pointer to an emerging universal civilization. Again, Paine's beautiful and apt phrase. Let us begin with a simple question. Who was Tom Paine? That is, how might we characterize this 18th century Enlightenment radical who appeared to be sui generis, a spontaneous phenomenon, an original? Tom Paine was first and foremost a theophilanthropist, an ardent lover of God and man, and most importantly, a lover of God in man and in nature. Paine was born in Thetford, England in 1737 and died in New York City in 1809, some 72 years later. He migrated to the American colonies in 1774 at the age of 37. Within a few short years after landing in Philadelphia, by the way, Paine became the most forward-looking visionary of the American Revolutionary period and one of the foremost advocates of the democratic spirit of individual liberty, social justice, and limited government. He embodied the most admirable qualities of Franklin, Washington, and Jefferson, but with few of their foibles. He was daringly original, truly brilliant, supremely articulate in debate and in writing, indomitable in his service to the cause of political independence, and refreshingly free of the major vices of his age. That is, slave ownership, monetary greed, and political ambition. He was and is the gold standard of the true revolutionary. High-principled, clear thinking, fearless, magnanimous to his enemies, and genuinely inclusive in both thought and conduct. If this is true about Paine the man, then what about his accomplishments and influence over the entire arc of his long and fruitful life? Paine's contribution to his epoch and beyond were manifold. He was principally an enlightened revolutionary agent, not only in America, but in France, and to a lesser degree in England as well. Paine may be seen as a luminous revolutionary because he consciously entertained an expansive vision of individual potential and social possibilities. He was, in fact, wholeheartedly committed to what Sri Iyer called, quote, the fundamental revolution from elitism to equality. Paine's radical political agenda became a Herculean task because at its core, it was really a revolution in ideas, a challenge to the known frontiers of consciousness. Paine, as we shall see, proved to be worthy of his evolving Promethean vision as he repeatedly initiated timely acts on behalf of a clearly apprehended new order of the ages. Paine's first important act in America was to write a book called Common Sense. This fiery, innovative thought piece became the catalyst that catapulted the 13 colonies into the quest for political independence. Common Sense dispelled the inherited myths about monarchy and hereditary aristocracy by using common sense reasoning and by showing their inherent contradictions institutionally. More significantly, and I think this is important today, more significantly, Paine de-glamorized government by characterizing it as simply a necessary restraint on human vices. In contrast, he heralded society as a positive good because it cultivated human virtues and nourished social affections. Furthermore, very important, interesting observation, Paine made the intriguing observation that since wisdom is clearly not hereditary, but spontaneously springs up like a seedless plant in all social classes, then the only rational and morally acceptable form of government is representative democracy, with its emphasis on individual liberty, human equality, and personal merit. One of the fortuitous spin-offs of Paine's immensely popular Common Sense was that it laid the theoretical groundwork for that marvelous document of propositions called the Declaration of Independence. After the signing of that forever inspirational document, the Revolutionary War began in earnest, and Paine was an integral part of it. In the early stages of the war, when the American troops were in continual retreat, and were in fact deserting by the thousands, General Washington appealed to Paine to write something that might raise the spirits of his beleaguered soldiers. Paine responded and penned an essay called The Crisis. Washington read The Crisis with evident eagerness and was elated by its inspiriting tone. He immediately ordered all his officers to summon all remaining troops. The ragged soldiers soon huddled around campfires on the snow-covered plains in the dead of a winter's night and listened with increasingly rapt attention to Paine's rousing summons of their warrior spirit. Let me read you out some selected passages from Paine's Crisis. These mantromic sentences are penned in the cadences of unconditional commitment to the sacred cause of American freedom, a cause which Paine implicitly connects with the wider cause of all mankind. Quoting Paine, and I'm not quoting you what is often quoted, these are the times that try men's souls. Very good phrase, very relevant now, it rings true. But I want to quote you a different passage from Paine. Let it be told to the future world but in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet and repulse it. Say not that thousands are gone. Turn out your tens of thousands. Throw not the burden of the day upon providence, but show your faith by your works. It matters not where you live or what rank of life you hold. The evil or the blessing will reach you all. The far and the near, the home countries and the back, the rich and the poor will suffer or rejoice alike. I love the man who can smile in trouble, that can gather strength from distress and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but he whose heart is firm and whose conscience approves his conduct will pursue his principles unto death. Pretty like an arrow being shot. The effect of Paine's spoken words on the Revolutionary Army was electric. Like Krishna, Paine invoked the Arjuna-like spirit of the journeyman soldiers. He appealed not to their fears or their interest, but to their deeper sense of honor. He challenged them to think beyond themselves, to the justice of their cause, and to the potential benefits of victory for future generations. Not surprisingly, Paine's eloquent plea played a vital role in Washington's first military victory at the Battle of Trenton on Christmas Day, 1776, a few days after the crisis paper was read out to his troops. Now, it is important to pause and note here that Paine once stated the following. Listen to this carefully. I never put pen to paper without my soul being present. I never put pen to paper without my soul being present. The implication of this self-revealing comment is of great theosophical significance, namely that the noetic current that suffuses the words of one who is great of soul invariably has an uplifting effect on the ready and the receptive. Clearly, Paine's numinous mind was the source of his healing magic. Time and again, Paine came to the rescue of the American war effort by virtue of the seminal, iridescent quality of his writings that tended to clarify the mind, refocus issues, and regenerate the lost enthusiasms of the heart. Soon after the defeat of Great Britain, Paine left for France and then on to England to promote his original design of an iron bridge. While in Paris and later in London, he personally conversed with many of the most eminent political leaders of his generation. Most significantly, he spent considerable time with the great British parliamentarian Edmund Burke, an admirer of Paine, but at heart a political conservative. Shortly after the French Revolution began in 1789, Burke wrote a scathing attack of the principles of the revolution, which he saw as a threat to Britain and to its revered institutions. Paine responded to Burke with a powerful rebuttal called Rights of Man. The latter created a sensation in Britain and America, especially among the working classes. In Rights of Man, Paine took the British monarchy to task and argued that the only rational form of government which can bind its citizens is a representative democracy based on universal suffrage and a recognition of the natural rights of man. Paine's fertile mind, ever the servant of his compassionate heart, set forth an array of politically heretical proposals such as universal public education, pensions for the aged, state relief for the unemployed, and a graduated annual income. This was a quantum shift from mere political liberty to positive social responsibility. Interestingly enough, Paine also called for a Congress of Nations. Think when this was done. He's speaking about a precursor to what we call the United Nations, or the League of Nations, if you wish to go earlier. So Paine was extremely prescient. The British government took umbrage, was not real pleased with what Paine had written, and they therefore declared what he wrote as seditious libel, because he was libeling, in their eyes, the monarchy and the aristocracy. And so he was tried and eventually hung in effigy, fortunately. Having escaped across the English Channel, Paine was hailed as a hero by avid citizens of the New France. Paine, in fact, Paine became one of only 2 non-French citizens to participate in the French National Convention. Initially, Paine was well received and treated with great respect. However, as the revolution began to deteriorate into collective madness, Paine eventually fell into disfavor with the Jacobins in the National Assembly. He was finally arrested in 1793 and taken to the Luxembourg prison to be guillotined. He remained in prison for a year before he was finally released. The reason for Paine's fall from grace in the French Assembly is worth a pause. Paine was that rare revolutionary in whom moral courage and magnanimous feelings were easy companions. He was never really bitter, self-righteous, or vindictive. He was unfailingly magnanimous with those in need, whether foe or friend. It is true that he did not easily tolerate fools when it came to issues of high moral or national importance. But that was equally true in relation to his supporters as well as to his critics. Paine's allegiance was to the exacting goddess of justice and not to persons. With respect to addressing wrongdoing, Paine was particularly impatient with retributive justice, including capital punishment. Therefore, when the French National Assembly called for the execution of King Louis XVI, Paine fearlessly rose to his defense. In his fervent appeal for the life of the king, Paine openly admitted that Louis XVI had committed treason and should be held accountable. However, argued Paine, the king had also been an ally of the American Revolution and contributed funds at a critical point during the battle with Great Britain. He was therefore entitled to mercy, not retribution. It is just, thundered Paine, to kill monarchy, but not right or civilized to execute the monarch. Shortly after being released from prison in Paris, Paine completed his most controversial work, The Age of Reason, a blistering critique of Christianity and of all institutionalized religions. As you might imagine, the public's reaction to Paine's trenchant criticism of formal religion led to the relentless vilification of his character, especially in America. When he returned in 1802 to the country of his second birth, he was no longer seen as the trusted protector of every man, but an unscrupulous agent of the devil. He died almost friendless in 1809 in New York City, but his vision and his optimism remained undiminished to the very end of his life. When he was taking his last breath, there were ministers, according to stories, who were trying to convert him to Christianity while he was at death's door, and he absolutely refused. He was a deist, not a Christian. Now, in light of Paine's unconquerable soul, it is no wonder that W.Q. Judge feelingly salutes Paine as one who, quote, could be trusted to stand almost alone with the lamp of truth in his hand amidst others who, in times that tried men's souls, quaked with fear. What is the first godlike quality that Krishna specifies in the Gita? Do you remember? Fearlessness is the first quality. It's a very interesting one to discuss at some point, and how it connects with commitment and how it connects with genuine humility, something Paine was rarely accused of, but which I think in a deeper sense he had, because he was so reverential before the divine and before humanity. That's where his real, genuine humility lay. Otherwise, he was bursting with confidence because he had confidence in what he was convicted about, what he was committed to. He saw its universality. He saw its profundity. He saw its relevance to what could emerge in time, not simply in America, but globally. He very much was someone with an incredible, refined sense of what was possible. And it went so far beyond his age. Now, before we consider Paine's deeper historical legacy, it is important to briefly turn to his age of reason. While Paine does not set out any systematical philosophical system, there are nonetheless gems of spiritual insight scattered throughout his work. In fact, his basic religious philosophy echoes the august and profound teachings of the wisdom religion. Let me illustrate. Paine tells us that nothing we perceive in the whole of creation creates itself. This can only be explained by an uncreated first cause. We call this first cause God, uncreated first cause. However, God is not a material cause, but a spiritual one. It is an ever-present, endlessly fertile cosmic intelligence working through material form. If this characterizes God, then what is nature? Nature is not patterned sense phenomena. Nature is composed of the intelligible principles behind sense phenomena. Nature is essentially the vast set of immutable laws that reveal the layered structure of reality. These laws are the focal points of divine intelligence. They reveal profound guiding truths for moral conduct as well as yield knowledge for practical material purposes. Nature is thus the instructor par excellence of the human family. If all this is true about God and nature, then what is man? Man is an immortal soul. He's also the rational hyphen between God and nature. In fact, noetic reason is the hermetic interpreter of nature's code language. In addition to the cognitive potential of reason, Paine acknowledges a pararational faculty that fosters higher-order thoughts and inspirational visions. Let me read you from Paine. There are two distinct classes of thought, those produced by reflection and those that bolt into the mind of their own accord. I have always made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, and it is from them I have acquired all the knowledge that I have. That's a fairly remarkable statement for someone who said, I never spent 5 minutes in which I wasn't learning something. As Theosophists, we might call this monasteigesi, or the radiant mind. From Paine's perspective, the rational observation of nature combined with intuitive openness can yield profound spiritual insights. As a case in point, let me share with you Paine's brilliant intuitive argument for the immortality of the human soul. Immortality, as defined by Paine, is continuity of consciousness maintained throughout variations in form and material. Analogical evidence for this can be found mirrored in nature. To illustrate this, Paine describes the transformation of the caterpillar into a butterfly. This is charming, as well as telling. The slow and creeping caterpillar of today passes in a few days into a torpid figure and into a state resembling death. And in the next change comes forth in all the miniature magnificence of life, a splendid butterfly. No resemblance of the former creature remains. Everything is changed. All his powers are new, and life is to him another thing. We cannot conceive that the consciousness of existence is not the same in this state of the animal as before. Nature, even physical nature, apparently, provides us with analogical evidence of profound truths. Deity is present everywhere. Its intelligence manifests itself through principles. Paine once said, the thing that human beings possess, besides we have the divine gift of reason, but thought is potentially immortal. And furthermore, all the laws of nature exist, whether minds recognize them or not. He said Euclid's theorems existed before Euclid discovered them. And if someone had been named Frank, it wouldn't have mattered. Anyone can discover what is already innate, implicit, present, because all minds are capable of understanding something of the divine mind manifested through all of nature. Now, if we look back at Paine's incredible life through the enriching wide-angle lens of the Theosophical movement, it is not difficult to understand that when Paine declared in the Age of Reason, quote, "My own mind is my own church," unquote, he was, unknown to himself, preparing the way for H.P. Blavatsky. It was she, of course, who ultimately slew the invidious minotaur of materialism that was devouring both religion and science. Nonetheless, Paine's attempt to democratize religion and to fight for a universal republic of conscience was a heroic preamble to the coming of the powerful sixth impulsion. You'll be happy to know that in the past 70 years, Paine has been gradually accepted by historians as a major creative force in the American Revolution. This is good, but is not sufficient. Why? Because beyond all Paine's marvelous achievements, there's a deeper truth about him. He was not simply a benevolent revolutionary, an incisive political thinker, a gifted pamphleteer, a serious student of science, a committed deist, or a brilliant visionary. He was certainly all this, but more than that, he was a forerunner of the world civilization of the future. He was a paradigm of the man of tomorrow because he wove together, in his very standpoint and actions, the golden threads of impersonal spirituality, universal responsibility, and intellectual originality. Paine was always more than an 18th century Enlightenment figure. He was, like Lincoln, meant for the ages. The resurgent interest in Paine is because the thinking of the world has finally moved in his direction. Clearly, modern consciousness is becoming more global and increasingly concerned with the needs and rights of all members of the human family. The ubiquity of human suffering has increasingly forced us out of our sectarian and ideological shells and made us appreciate the importance of human interdependence and international cooperation. Perhaps we see less through a glass darkly than at any other time in the last 2,000 years. We now realize that the city of man is the true focus of the pioneers of the future. This is precisely why we can turn to Paine for instruction and inspiration. He was always forward-looking and able to make eternal principles contemporary. It is no wonder that the most often quoted phrase of Paine is, quote, "My country is the world, and my religion is to do good," unquote. He was a prophet of the future, as well as a luminous figure of the American and French revolutions. To honor him is to salute the best in ourselves and all men and women who dedicate their lives and their fortunes to the civilizations of tomorrow. Thank you very much.